Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Caberna. That's Matt Morrison. Hope you're all having a good, Tuesday as we get in here, May the 17th. Matt, how's it going on your end?
Pretty good. Just going with it.
That's the only way to be this time of year. We got playoffs going on still in just about every sport besides Major League Baseball. Horizon League championships are just around the corner as well. So that's what we're going to start you off with here today on our Tuesday edition of the Casual Sports Podcast. Right now in Horizon League Baseball, the leading team remains Wright State, 25-24 overall. Not the best overall record in the conference, but they have the best overall conference record at 18-8. UIC lost second place. Oakland has taken second away from UIC through this past weekend. Purdue Fort Wayne's the 4 seed. Northern Kentucky's the 5. Youngstown State is 6th. And Milwaukee remains down in 7th. The only team at the moment not in the championship bracket here in about, I believe, a week and a half is how far we are away. Games 1 and 2 of the Horizon League tournament will start on Wednesday, May 25th at the number 1 seeded team. So at the moment, they would be playing down in Wright State for that tournament. Right now, UIC is coming out of the weekend losing one of 2 games against Youngstown State, and then they lost their Sunday game against Oakland 13-14, a real close one. And at the moment with that game, that is what gave Oakland the edge to jump into first place. Milwaukee was able to somehow find a way to steal a game against Wright State in their doubleheader. Fortunately, they lost both of their games to Fort Wayne, came out of the weekend 1-3 overall. Northern Kentucky took 1 of 2 games against Oakland on Friday and took 1 of 2 games against Youngstown State on Sunday. For Oakland baseball, as mentioned, they won the game against University of Illinois Chicago, and they split the series against Northern Kentucky. A lot of splits going on in this last weekend, and that did not change at all for Wright State either. They split the Fort Wayne series, and they split the Milwaukee series. So it's a lot of back and forth between these teams here and right now. Matt, as we're coming down into the final close of the season, what team are you looking at to make that final jump? For me right now, it's probably Oakland. They're probably the team heating up the most. They have the best overall record, and at the moment are just 2 games back from Wright State with a week to go.
I like Oakland. I like Wright State as well. You can't really count out YSU. I mean, can't really count them out too much, but I'd be either going with Oakland or Wright State. So probably Wright State.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're the clear favorites. I'm saying, who are you expecting to make that final jump here in the edge of the season to maybe steal that throne away from Wright State, or you just not think anybody is going to take that away?
I don't think anybody would probably take it. I think Wright State will still finish with it.
Well, it seems pretty likely because 3 games left in the season for both Oakland and Wright State, and Oakland's got a series, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday set against Northern Kentucky. Wright State, they got 3 games in a row, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, against the worst team in the conference in Milwaukee. However, that Milwaukee team did beat them on Sunday, so Milwaukee's going to have to steal 2 of those games against Wright State in order for Oakland to be able to even make that jump or at least find a way to tie it. I'm not sure at the moment what their tiebreakers are. Their last matchup between the 2 of them, Oakland took both games against Wright State. That is the first matchup. Right now, Oakland would have all the tiebreakers. So if we come down to that tie and Wright State goes 1-2 in their final and Oakland goes 2 in one of those last 3, which is possible, unlikely but possible, Oakland would be the only team that can jump Wright State as of right now.
Yeah. That looks pretty good. Sounds
all right.
Good.
Well, we'll move on here out of that. Matt, you were calling some playoff softball yesterday. What went on there in the OHSAA playoffs?
Okay, so pretty exciting games, honestly. So the first game this was in Kinsman, Ohio, and the Badger Braves were actually the visiting team in their own field, but they were taking on the Matthews Mustangs. Man, Emma Gates on the mound for the Mustangs was lights out. She ended up hitting a triple, which led to their only run of the game, which led them to the victory, 1-0. That was in like the 6th inning, bottom of the 6th inning was insane. I'm like, it was 0-0 the whole game. I'm like, all right, both pitchers were insane. Hunter Bengala for Badger was lights out too. They were putting all their stuff right there, low and away or kind of high. But that one time, the only one that could really hit Bengala was Gates, the Matthews pitcher, and that's why I ended up coming back and getting her, because Gates would fly too. Like, she would make singles in the doubles. So, and there's a couple infield errors, like a couple errors by the shortstop for Badger. The ball went right through her legs. I'm like, oh no! It was really a good game, and Badger played a lot better from what I heard, because the last 2 times they played Matthews, they lost by double digits. So
yeah, and
played more competitively. So
yeah, and to Badgers' credit here in this entire playoffs, they put together maybe the best run they've had all season.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they didn't have great competition, but they were the underdog in every game they played, and they won 2 out of the 3. And maybe the biggest thing for me is, in those 3 games, they allowed only 2 runs in their entire playoff run. They did lose to Matthews, 1-0, but Matthews is far and away the favorite. And it was a 1-0 game again from a 1 versus 17. You never see something like that happen. That's just, you don't see that level of competition out of a 17 seed most of the time. So lots of credit over there to those Badger Braves ladies, because what they did here in the playoffs is special. I mean, I don't know their last time they made a district appearance, but to get there and then be that close, I know it's heartbreaking for them, but they got to keep their heads held high, because what they did in those 3 games was impeccable. I mean, 21-2 is what they outscored opponents to in this playoff run. So I know it was a very small sample size, and they ended up losing, but got to give a lot of credit to what those ladies did. That was impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, hats off to them. But then the second game was even better. Oh, my goodness. Chalker had hitting power.
Chalker versus Brookfield, by the way, 7 versus 3 seed.
Yeah. Chalker versus Brookfield. Yeah, Brookfield had hitting power. I'm like, oh my goodness. Nicholson for Brookfield had a no-hitter like literally last week. I'm like, I was so excited. She didn't have a no-hitter in this game, but Chalker went up 2-0 a little bit early, 3rd, 4th inning, I think. And then boom, right in that second half of the inning, like I call them the big 3. Anna Riker, Sophia Hook, and Abby DeJoy. Boom. Hook can hit and fly around the bases. She's really good at third base, too. She had a lot of sick throws over to first. And it's harder, in my opinion, in softball than in baseball, because that's 60 feet, not 90 feet. So you have to get that out there way quicker than baseball. So it's something. And so they stormed and took the lead 3-2. That's the way it stayed the whole game. You had the weather delay. I tell you what, if you go, you can't go back and watch it, man. But the dust was flying everywhere. I had dust on the computer, on the camera lens, on my phone, everywhere. It was everywhere, and it was the perfect dust right behind Nicholson on the mound. I'm like, the Nicholson, it was in the bottom of the 6 or top of the 7, something like that. I'm like, the dust flowing in behind her, like it set the mood. It was awesome. It's a pretty darn good game. So Brookfield ended up winning 3-2, and they will face Matthews tomorrow. I'll be on that call too tomorrow at like 5, I think.
Well, you had both games there in the district semifinals for the Kingsman bracket for Division 4 softball. Matthews in Brookfield will compete for a chance to go on to regionals for Division 4 in Region 13 will be played at let's see here, at Strongsville High School. Yeah, it's Strongsville, either 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. game. They haven't set which side gets what yet. So, big chance right now. I've been down to the Strongsville complex. I was there last year. Great facilities, but that stage is big, so we'll get to see which team can make that run. And Matthews is probably the most deserving team in the Valley. What they've done this season has been amazing. They're a really good team. But Kinsman Badger, they exposed them a little bit. So I know they had home.
Brookfield was there and watched the whole game.
And I think Brookfield might be one of the hottest teams in the last half of the season. They didn't start out great. I mean, you were kind of telling us behind the scenes ooh, I don't know what this team really has, but they click. They click down in the later stretch, and they have a great shot to take down Matthews in a massive upset.
Oh, they very well do, and
It's
they
not
have
too
a good
often a
coach.
one seed doesn't make it out of the regionals, or pardon me, out of the
Yeah,
sectional in
yeah.
districts.
And they also have a great coach leading the way, David DeJoy. He just was named Coach of the Year. So hats off to him and his team. They're good people. I see the joys all the time in the store and stuff where I work at. So they're good people,
Yep.
and we'll see what happens.
Well, I got a game as well going on tonight down at Bob Steen Park. Should be a fairly good one. Sectional semifinal. So, it's at least going to be playoff baseball. Anything can happen. Mooney and Campbell going at it. Cardinal Mooney's only 9-11 right now, but they have a win over Warren JFK in one of their last two. And then they have an absolute shootout loss against JFK in the second game of that series. Don't be fooled by Mooney's record going into this. They are a highly underrated team. You look at what they can do. You look at their starting pitching. They have phenomenal pitching. So don't get distracted by the fact that they're 9-11. They're going to have an uphill battle, even if whoever wins this is going to have an uphill battle because they got Orwell Grand Valley coming up in the sectional final, who is one of the 2 seeds here in Division 3. So it's going to be a hard road, but Campbell Memorial, they haven't had a great season. They could shock us here, but 3 wins in total probably doesn't leave a lot of leeway for them. They've had good pitching, but they don't seem to are able to score runs. Now, that can change on any given day. You can have an off pitching night for Cardinal Mooney, and Campbell just jumps on top of it. But Mooney, they haven't had too many off nights on the mound. They've just had a really tough schedule. Mooney, as an 11 seed, might be one of the best double-digit seeds in the playoffs this year. So that'll be an exciting game. YSN Live tonight at 5 p.m. Louisville and Maplewood also going on at Bob Steen, and Struthers in West Geauga. Columbiana will take on West Branch tonight at University of Mount Union for their game. So a lot of things going on around the valley.
I've got Lordstown versus Brookfield tonight. That should be pretty good. We'll see what happens. Brookfield is without their head coach who recently resigned. I'm not going to really go into it, but he's not there longer. So hopefully, whoever's there. I mean, it's just always next man up. But we'll see what happens. They've had kind of a down year. They've got their first win this year in like 2 years. So maybe something. They have 4 wins on the year. We'll see.
We'll see what they can do. Hey, anything can happen in the playoffs. You saw it from Badger. They were not supposed to have gone as far as they did.
Their baseball team's got to go play Latonia. We're talking about that, so they have a pretty good chance to beat them. But then if they win that game, guess who they got to go play? Warren JFK.
Yeah, good luck with that one. JFK is still one of the favorites yet again this year. So
yeah, they're still the defending state champions. So.
Right, for Division 4 baseball. So and they pretty much have, I think,
everybody back.
2, maybe 1 or 2 guys that came back. I think they only lost Cam Holliba. I don't remember. I think there was another one, but I can't remember their names. It's been a full season around since I last saw that team. So we'll get in now to the NBA tonight. Game 1 of the Celtics Heat Eastern Conference Finals. Matt, these 2 teams coming in about as hot as can be.
Yeah.
They've both had great runs. They've both taken down great teams. We've seen flaws in both of them, and we've seen a lot of perfection out of them as well. Yep. What's left? What's happening in this series? What's going down? How's it going down? What are you thinking about this one coming into it? Game 1's in Miami.
I love Miami. I want Miami to go so bad. I'm gonna root for them. I don't mind Boston either. I do not mind Boston at all. But Boston can really guard that 3-point line. They're fierce guarding that, that 3-point line. And Miami doesn't really have any of those. I mean, they have Bam, but who else do they have that knocked down into the paint? Like nobody really. Most of their shots come from the mid-range and 3-point line. So the Celtics, I mean, they both play. I put it this way: Boston is like a more like high-powered version of Miami. I really think that they're a little younger. They have both teams have players that can pretty much guard every position, but we're gonna have to see. Miami, they don't, like I said, they stay out of the paint a lot. They take a lot of those mid-range and 3-point shots, and that looks pretty easy in those first 2 rounds of the playoffs. But Boston is like first in opponent shooting percentage. I think both inside and on the 3-point line. I think that's what that says right here that I'm looking at. And the last two in the 3 games that these two played this season, Miami went 1 for 2 and shot just 32.8% from the 3-point line. So they're going to have to come up with something else. Bam's going to have to go to work, or somebody's got to do something.
Yeah, well, Matt, to your point about the Heat's outside shooting, it hasn't been here in these playoffs. Out of the 16 teams that made the playoffs, they rank 13th. They are shooting at just 32.1%. That's ahead of the Raptors, Bulls, and the Jazz, who are obviously all eliminated. And you look on the other side for Boston, and they're shooting at 37%. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but 5% in a game more. You take every percentage point that you can get when you look at these kind of numbers. The back and forth, that's really the one stat that I'm even looking at right now that is separating these teams. Rebounds are 0.1 apart per game. Miami Heat is 41.4, and the Celtics are 41.5. That is how close these numbers are. Turnovers are in the exact same boat. Steals do favor Miami Heat by a little over 1 per game, but blocks on the other side, Boston has been leading the charge when it comes to blocks in this postseason. They are the number 1 team remaining in blocks, and they're pulling down 6 of those a game. So they're doing a phenomenal job defending the paint. And when you talk about Miami Heat's outside shooting going cold in this postseason, well, now they have to go down inside and bump heads with a team that is blocking a good bit of shots in these games.
Yeah.
Now, these two are the best 2 plus-minus teams in the postseason so far. Our 4 remaining teams are actually all the best in plus-minus, but Miami Heat really leads this charge. Their differential has been by and far a very long distance ahead of what everybody else has been doing in the postseason. They're winning games now by an average of 9.5 points per game. So we're definitely seeing a big step up in their offensive productions, and that's coming mainly on the inside. So they found ways to get in there. And I think the fact that they went in against the 76ers, a team that, touts Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid as their 4-5 guys. I know they don't get very big past there, but the fact that they went inside there and were still able to find their points. And the only 2 times we saw them really struggle were in Joel Embiid's return games in Philadelphia in 3 and 4. So I'm not too concerned about their abilities to score down low and get inside and fight against the Celtics team. I think my biggest worry is keeping up with the scoring output we've seen of the Celtics, and that doesn't seem like something to really worry about when you have the Miami Heat team that's put up 120 points in nearly 2 of their playoff games so far. But I haven't seen a lot out of Miami to really warrant that confidence in their offense, especially not at the end of that 76ers series. There was something about it. They got the big score total in game 5, but game 6, defense won that game. And, you do see that a lot once we get down to Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals. Teams have to win scoring under 100 points. And when that happens, I got to lean with Boston. They've been able to win close. So many times they've been able to win close.
Man. I'm leaning that way too. I want Miami. I like Miami. But who's gonna? It's Jimmy Butler. And they don't even have Kyle Lowry right now. He's out for game 1, so no Kyle Lowry. So Jimmy Butler, Victor Oladipo, Bam, everybody. Everybody else on the team. They got to lock up Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, if you lock those guys up, what about Grant Williams? Boston or Milwaukee, same situation. Grant Williams went all over Milwaukee.
Yeah, they did a great job, limiting, not taking down, but limiting Tatum and Brown's shots. And it went down to Peyton Pritchard putting up 14 points in 17 minutes. Grant Williams doing 27 and 39, and Marcus Smart hit double digits as well. That's why they won that final game in the closeout in Boston for game 7. And I think I can see where you're going with this. Who is the matchups right now for this Miami Heat squad? And I think that's a big concern because we're in the weaning years down of Victor Oladipo. He's not the same guy he was
No,
back in Indiana. And
he's capable. He's a
there's been a
good
clear
bench
fall off
player.
since he left
Oh
there.
yeah.
So he's only 30 years old, but I think his prime is it's at the tail end. He's only a guy that ever averaged 17.4 points per game since he entered the league back in 2013. And I'm not overly concerned that he's going to be the guy that goes out there and wins one of these games. I don't think that's possible.
Though.
What?
He's a good defender.
He's a great defender.
Terrific. Him and Caleb Martin are really good defenders on that bench. And talking about their bench, I think that's a huge advantage for Miami. I think their bench is has more depth than
you say that, but they haven't been playing that bench very much, Matt. I mean, outside of
that's what I'm saying.
They're only bringing in Oladipo and Tyler Hero. They gave a little bit of time to Dwayne Dedmon against the 76ers, but Caleb Martin, maybe the biggest surprise, Duncan Robinson isn't playing anymore. His three-point shooting, he went cold and they removed him from the lineup earlier in the season. And I think if the Heat are going to win this series, it comes down to putting faith in those guys, putting faith in guys like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. You drafted these guys, you brought them up, you fit them into your system. They were a huge reason why this team went on the run in the bubble a couple of years ago and made it down into a great series against the Lakers. This team can do that again, but I don't think that they have it this year. I think they've had an easier ride, and I know that's hard to say when they've gone up against the Hawks and 76ers, both great teams, but 76ers weren't at full strength and the Hawks looked like a shell of what they were in last year's postseason. I mean, it was 4-1. There was one game victory for the Hawks, 111-110 in game 3. So I don't see much out of the Heat's run so far that's giving me faith that they're going to go up against this Boston Celtics team that we've been really rolling on for the last month in these playoffs. So
we've been wrong before, though. We didn't have the faith in Dallas. Look what the heck they did.
Yeah, I know. We were yelling about that yesterday plenty.
Yeah, I know. But we'll see. I'm still going to – I don't really know who I'm going to pick. But, I mean, no Lowry for game 1. That's a big piece right there. Jimmy Butler can't do it all by himself anymore. He needs another piece like that, and Kyle Lowry is definitely that piece, I think. But we'll see. Their bench has got to get going. Tyler Hero, definitely. 6th man of the year. Gabe Vincent, Oladipo, and Caleb Martin. These guys got to go. They got to help out.
If Miami wins, it's always the bench. The bench is where Miami can win or lose a game because we know what the regular offense is going to get. You're going to get a double-double, probably 15-10 or 15-15 out of Bam Adebayo. He's going to give you that. Jimmy Butler, he probably is going to get you 25 to 30 points a game. PJ Tucker, I'd probably rely on PJ Tucker to go 8 to 15 points. That's what you're going to get. Max Struss is going to be the question mark, especially if they have him in in that starting lineup. I feel like he's going to be an up and down guy. He hasn't been in this spot before, so I think he's the wild card, especially for Miami. Gabe Vincent, he's going to get you maybe 10 points if he's having a good day out there. He's not one of your big ballers. Oladipo, he's a guy that could go out and give you 20 or he's going to give you 4. Big question marks there. It comes down to the bench, though, because if those guys, Oladipo, Hero, Dedmon, Martin or Robinson, if those guys play, or Vincent or Strus, if either one of those guys can get something and they go off, that's the key for Miami because we know what their big 3 are giving us in Tucker, Adebayo, and Butler. One of the things for me, PJ Tucker, when he was back in Houston, he was part of those squads that choked a lot of times in the playoffs. So I'd be very concerned right now that, it's potential it could happen again, that he's been in this spot and he's eating himself up about it. But I don't think you just go ahead and say right away that the bench for the Heat is that much better than the Boston Celtics. You look over there, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Daniel Tice. I know they're not getting a lot of minutes right now, but those guys can all do something, especially if Peyton Pritchard goes off again like he did against the Bucks in that Game 7. If he has a similar performance, that's going to be awesome for Boston. That's going to be enough to lift them for a win if Peyton Pritchard gets his. And the wild card for me in this game for the Celtics, I have 2 of them. Al Horford. If Al Horford is the same monster that we saw against the Bucks,
he's sick.
He got ticked off one game, and that series was done because his paint defense was locked down. He's a wild card. And the other one, Derek White. He's one of those forgotten names that this Boston lineup acquired here in the last couple of years. They got him over from the Spurs, and he got picked up from the Spurs little after halfway over the season. He played 49 games for the Spurs. He averaged 14.4 points per game, shot at 30% from downtown, 42% from the field in 30 minutes. His minutes got cut a little bit. Points went down a little bit. Pretty much every number of his went down coming over to Boston. If he returns to what he did back in 2020 for this Spurs team, he's going to be dangerous in this playoffs. If he can get those last 2 years from the Spurs transferred over, if he gets some more minutes and can get his shots down, Derek White's the wild card for the Boston Celtics going into tonight.
And he's going to be big because I don't know how much Robert Williams will play. I mean, he's available, but remember the bone bruise he had in his left knee cost him to miss, like 3 games, I think.
Yeah. Well, he played
and Marcus Smart's out.
I think
Marcus Smart is very questionable with his foot.
I'm checking out the injuries here for a second.
I know no Lowry, so he tried to return. He was like,
Marcus Smart questionable. That's a pretty hard one. You got one of your top down. Robert Williams will not have any restrictions for game 1.
Okay. So he's available.
He's available, and at the moment, it looks like he'll play. So.
All right. But we were talking about Duncan Robinson. I know he hasn't been the best at shooting. If his shooting does go, I mean, he's like a horrible defender. So, I mean, that's why he's sitting them down. Spoelstra is having him on the bench. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see which head coach can win here today, and this is a big step up for Boston. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people questioned when Boston kind of pushed Brad Stevens to take more of a front office role and brought in Udoka. So I think, with Boston, there was a lot of question marks going into this, what this season was going to be when they moved Brad Stevens out of that head coaching role. But you got to give credit to Udoka on what he's been able to do. And I think this is a great coaching matchup. You got a lot of experience on the side of Erik Spoelstra, and then you got Udoka on this side, raw, untested guy here with the Boston Celtics. But when he took over, this team went on their big run. He was coaching with Greg Popovich from 12 to 19. He was briefly with the Sixers and Nets. He's here with Boston now. I think if anybody is going to do this, it's him. He's played in the NBA. He's played in other countries. He's been all over the place. This guy has about as much experience as you could ask for in situational basketball. So I think you take the experience from Spoelstra on the side of Miami, just being in these moments before. Then you got the untested experience from Udoka.
And I like Brad Stevens in the front office because he knows how to recruit players to the team. I mean, That's what he does. I mean, he got Gordon Hayward to come the butler. So,
and he knows how to develop too. That's why they brought him in.
Yeah. So,
all right. Well, let's make predictions officially here for the Eastern Conference Finals. Miami, Boston. Matt, I know you're liking Miami right now, and you want them to take this series. And heaven knows, I don't really like either one of these teams. Miami is, what took LeBron away from us in Cleveland. So that's always left a sour mark on me a little bit. And Boston, they beat us in those playoffs. They're part of the reason why LeBron left in the first place to go down to Miami. That was the final game, was against this Boston team. I mean, I know that's a long time ago, but
was it? Or
was
it the match?
It was one of those. I don't remember if it was that series or not, but he's had a lot of matchups again. We've had a lot of matchups against Boston, is what I'm saying, and they've always left a sour taste. They grew up hating Boston, and I never grew up really liking Miami either. So this is a matchup of two teams I don't really like, but I'm going on what this season has been, who's playing the best basketball, and right now, the best basketball team in the country is playing in Boston, because what they've done in these playoffs in the last half of the season, I think, I mean, obviously, if they'd been playing that way all season long, they would have been a 1 seed instead of a 2. And the fact that they made it from a 2 seed anyway, despite a losing record near the All-Star break,
Yeah, they
Boston
made a
is
dunk.
the best team right now in basketball. And I'm going to put this out here. I said I was taking Boston on yesterday's show. I'm taking them here today. Boston in 6 games, but Miami's got game 1 here tonight.
Yeah, I think Miami will take. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm just up in
Well,
the air
obviously,
about
we'll have to see. We're making predictions. It's not like we know
I
for
don't. I
sure.
don't know. I don't know.
Throw your
I don't
ball
know.
to the wall and let them stick. Come on, pick.
I'm gonna go. I'm going Miami still.
Yeah.
Just because you're going Boston. I'm gonna go Miami in 6 too. I think they can figure some stuff out. I think they can get their bench going more and help Jimmy Butler out. Jimmy Butler will have like 30 points, or if he stays there and the bench produces like, up to 20, 25 points, and you get one other starter to get that, I think they'd be okay. But it's gonna be bad.
It should be
It's
fun,
gonna be
is
a
what it
fun
should be.
series. It's gonna
Well,
go
I mean,
six,
with
7
what we've
games.
seen in basketball so far, we haven't had a terribly lot of close games, but we've seen some fun series so
Oh
far.
yeah.
A lot of back and forth pretty much all over the place. So let's go into NHL here briefly for today as our first game, 7 p.m., Tampa Bay and Florida, as we got the second round up and going now. Matt, what are your thoughts going into these first matchups of the day? I'll start Tampa, Florida.
I like Tampa. This series is gonna be one of the best series right here. This is gonna be good. I mean, they're all pretty darn good series, but I'm kind of paying more attention to this one because I mean, you got your veterans on the team. I like Florida. I like Tampa. They've been there. Tampa knows what they have to do, and Florida's been honestly a bad team. They just came out of nowhere, and then now they're pretty darn good past couple of years, I think. So I don't know. I'm gonna lean towards experience. Are we giving predictions?
Yeah, go for it. Shoot.
I'm gonna go Tampa. I think I picked. I don't know who I picked yesterday, but I'm going. Some reason I changed my mind. I'm going Tampa. I think Tampa can win this.
Yeah,
I
man,
don't
I
know.
was saying it yesterday. Tampa at this point, we can't count them out anymore. It's impossible to overlook this team. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna sit here on a sports show and tell the world that Tampa isn't that team anymore,
They
you're
won it
flat
2
out
years
wrong
in
at
a
this
row.
point.
So as
Right.
of right now, they are that team.
They are that team at the moment. This trophy runs through Tampa, and it has the last 2 years. This year has been nothing different. They opened things up as the favorite. Yeah, they had a bit of a slump in the season. They had a bad matchup against Toronto. We talked about it. The matchups in that series were just awful for them. I think the matchups against Florida are a lot better because the Panthers rely on one man to do the majority of their work, and it's Carter Varheg. And, he's a young guy, 26 years old. He's been doing a great job so far, for Florida this season and in these playoffs. But when you have to rely on one man to do so much for a team, I think, you get down to these moments and that's what might burn you. So I like Tampa. I picked them to be one of the favorites here, despite the fact that they were a 3 seed. I said this is one of those teams you just can't count out, and I haven't done it. I overlooked them a little bit when Toronto got up on them. I lost a little bit of faith, but it's back. It's fully restored. I got Tampa taking this series. I got them taking game 1 tonight in Florida.
Yeah.
And I have them doing this in 5 games. For whatever reason, I think Florida gets 1 of 2 at home, but I think you go back to Tampa. Tampa takes a 3-1 lead. They come back into Florida and they steal it.
Yep, I think so too. 5, maybe a 6 game, but I'm leaning towards more 5. I mean, Tampa's this lightning. I mean,
Nice.
I
St. Louis and Colorado, though, the other game going on 9:30 tonight. Can Colorado remain undefeated as they take on the Blues from St. Louis? Matt?
I'm going to come out here and say right now, St. Louis is winning game 1. I think that I do think Colorado's going to edge this series. I mean, you might see 7, but maybe 6, 7 games. This is going to be a heck of a series, I think. I don't think it's going to be done in 4 or 5 games. Colorado had that walk in the park that first round against Nashville. I think they've been off for a while too. So I think they're going to come in their heads high a little bit, and St. Louis is going to sneak up and take it. St. Louis is taking game 1.
I don't know if I can pick both one seeds to lose their first game of the playoffs. That seems a little out there for me to make that pick. Hey, I've been out there plenty. I've done enough.
I know. So why don't you continue this?
Why? Well, because you got to keep a balance. Because if I just go out there all the time, people just go, well, that's just crazy Caberna over there.
You know, all the time.
You can't take it serious. It's just crazy Caberna. You know, sometimes, Matt, I have to be a little bit logical. And I talked about yesterday that St. Louis coming in to today's game, they're in a similar situation against the Wild. I think all three of these teams were very equal throughout the season. And when you talk about even teams like this, the team that's playing at home wins. And I think that's what happens here. I think the first 4 games, the home team wins them both. We go into game 5 in a 2-2 split. I got Colorado winning the first 2 games, obviously playing at home. Yeah. This series is going 7. And it's going to come down to someone has to win a road game. And I think that's going to be virtually impossible. You got great crowds in both regions. I mean, those Colorado fans, they get a bit rowdy up there, you know, breathing that thin air and a little bit of something else. But, you know, it's allowed. It's legal up there. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, you know. But, you know, they know how to have fun. They know how to be rowdy. They know how to get things going. They know how
they're mountain climbers.
They know how to light things up. Is basically what I'm going on with. I expect it to be a fun series back and forth overall, but at the very end of it, Colorado's that team. We've been talking about them all year. What this team's potential could be, and the sky's still the limit for them. They need this series. They're the 1 seed. They're going to take this series. I don't think there's any road wins in this series, though. I think this goes full 7, and Colorado finishes off at home in game 7.
That's fair. I don't know.
Well, nobody does. That's why we're guessing.
I don't know.
No one can tell us wrong until later tonight, and by that time, we're already way past it going on to tomorrow's games.
Yeah, we'll be in bed, so
right.
Late.
We'll have games and go to bed, and that's how it works when you're broadcasting.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let's head over into Major League Baseball to wrap out the show. We got about 20 minutes left here, so there's already 1 game in progress. White Sox and Royals first of a doubleheader today. Currently bottom of the second, 0-0. 1 down for the Royals at the plate. Matt, what has been your biggest surprise so far in baseball this season? I know we've kind of been looking back and forth what's been going on, but I think as the days continue to fly by, I think you get this back and forth every day of, there's always something new in baseball that's jumping out. There's a new headline. There's something crazy that happens. So what's been that surprise? How about just in the month of May?
In the month of May, the biggest surprise? I don't know. Let me get
about halfway through the season now.
I mean, the biggest surprise, I mean, there's a bunch of surprises. I mean, as of May, I mean, especially with the Mets, like, I'm like, oh, wow, they're playing better. I mean, that's definitely a surprise. But, I mean, they always slump off. So if it's a surprise this month, but will it be a surprise in the months coming up? That's a huge question right there. So as of right now, yeah, that's a surprise. But same with the Angels. Like, wow, like, they've been doing better and it's about time too. I mean, yeah, Mike Trout and now Otani, they're ranked 1 and 2 in top 100 baseball players. And I'm like, all right, so go out and show that you have the 2 best players on your team. Go out and start winning, and that they're doing that. They're right there with Houston for that neck and neck title lead right now, and I'll tell you one thing that's not a surprise is Houston. Houston is always good for some reason. They're always competitive. So
for whatever reason, I mean, they made plenty of change-ups to their roster, and they have no problem moving on from big names. And they're quiet about it because I don't think they want headlines anymore after the shenanigans that happened more than a couple of years ago. At this point, it's really been a while since that happened.
Yeah,
but I think they've learned to kind of just fly under the radar because they know if they get their name out there again, people are just going to bash it immediately. And I think they just are trying their best to stay away from media. So, yeah, I think Houston is definitely the biggest surprise of May to this point. I mean, 8-2 now in the last 10, but they were 9-1 after yesterday. They have one of the higher differentials of teams in first place across the American League. But maybe the other one for me, it's Shohei Otani. After last season's explosion, winning the MVP, he was an all-star, and just overall, I mean, an absolute stud. He comes in so far this season, and he's looked great again. I mean, we're only 37 games in games he's played in. He's already got 8 home runs. He was up there for the league last year with 46. He just belted his 101st. He's had 2 home runs in each of the last 2 days so far. Shohei Otani is showtime, man. And when you talk about what the Angels are doing, it's because of number 17 in Shohei Otani. What this guy does for the team it's impeccable. You can't find it anywhere else. He is a talent that we haven't seen in baseball in decades. I mean, to have a pitcher-hitter combo like this at this level, to me, the closest comparison to have with this level of dominance on the mound and the bats, it's Babe Ruth. Just some fat pitcher from Boston, right? And instead, this is a phenomenal all-around athlete who's doing what a guy like Ruth did almost 100 years ago. And the fact that it really feels like it's been that long since we've seen this level of dominance, and maybe Ruth wasn't even that great on the mound compared to what Otani's done. And, you know, I think Otani continues to be, doesn't matter what season he's playing in. 5 years now he's been in the league. He is still one of the most, if not the most exciting player in baseball. All about it. No matter what, he's the guy you want. That guy puts butts in seats, and that's what sports is about.
I think there's a surprise with every team now. Every team's got like a surprise. I mean, with Cleveland, it's definitely Stephen Kwan right now. I mean, what about with the Rays? Ji-Man Choi is putting up like Barry Bond type numbers. I mean, that dude is hitting. So I mean that's a huge surprise there. How about with Boston? You remember Michael Wacha? The guy was insane in like 2013 when they won the World Series. He's like reformed. He's gotten back. He's playing much better. So we'll have to see if they can keep that up. The Yankees, I mean, they got Joey Gallo. I'm reading this here. It says the big bats are struggling, which I don't really I mean they're in first place in their division. Are they really struggling? I mean, you could probably click out Joey Gallo. I mean, he doesn't. He's a big hitter with this huge group of big hitters, and he's not looking like a big hitter. Where's that Joey Gallo with Texas? That would just come up and smack that ball every at bat. You know, he's like 4 for 29 so far on the year. So, like, what's going on with him? That's a huge surprise.
You said Joey Gallo's 4 for 29? That ain't right. He's 18 for 94. Batting average of 191.
Oh, you know what? This is like an old article, I guess.
Okay. Last year, though, I mean, he's coming off one of his worst seasons in a long time. He played 58 games last year, had a batting average of 160. I mean, we're looking down. I know we were talking about it a lot in basketball that we can't expect players to go that long anymore. Baseball's a similar story. We've had some mega great athletes that have played way past when they should be able to. Guys like Trout. And, you know, we can't expect that. Guys have a good 4 or 5 years at the professional level. That is sports. You don't have 20-year careers. That just isn't everybody's game. And Joey Gallo had a good last 4 or 5 years when he was sitting in his prime with the Texas Rangers. And you give him credit for what he did. New York acquired him, and they were hoping to have that same magic. It's just not there anymore. That's not Joey Gallo. No. He had his prime, and it came a little bit earlier than I think everybody would have expected, and the Rangers were never able to capitalize on it.
Who are the two teams we're talking about? The Royals and who's playing?
Royals and White Sox are playing. We weren't really talking about it, but top of the third, the White Sox got a man on.
Let's talk about right there. The biggest surprise for the Royals is Bobby Wood Jr. is not hitting. He's supposed to be like their young star phenomenon, and he's not hitting. He's not doing very well. And he looked awesome in that opening day against Cleveland. So it's kind of a disappointment. But,
yeah, definitely a big disappointment. And, a lot of teams are working off of injuries right now, too. And I think that's part of the reason, why we've been seeing a slump out of a lot of teams. But when you talk about Bobby Witt Jr. supposed to be that big star and what Kansas was hoping to make that big jump up, and the fact that he's not injured and he's still not being what they needed, I think is a big heartbreaker for Kansas City so far this season. I mean, this AL Central, in all honesty, it's been wide open for the last 7 years.
Sure is.
7 years, this division has been as open as it comes. You don't know who's going to win it. It comes down to somebody has a good final month, and that's who wins this division. And it's every year for the last 7 years that it's been like this. The AL Central is that division in baseball that they're the wild card. Every time it's who's gonna do it. And you most likely are only getting one team in because your second team isn't good enough to get that wild card spot from a team in the AL East or West. So when you look at Kansas City, they thought they were at their moment to shine, and maybe that comes in the second half of the year, but they're going to need a good turnaround at this point because I don't have a lot of confidence in them. 4-6 in those last 10 now, and the differential is pouring it on in the negative department, and they can't win at home. They can't win on the road. There's nothing about Kansas right now that you look at and go, I have hope. And I don't see any right now for Kansas City. And that's sad because Bobby Witt Jr., I mean, he could have been a huge spark for this team, but we just haven't seen it.
It's still his first year. So
yeah.
He's not
but they were hoping for that
impact.
Steven Kwan jump in that first year.
Yeah.
For what Kwan did opening, that's what Witt Jr. was supposed to do for Kansas.
I know, it's funny. Nobody even remember. I don't even remember, but I guess Steven Kwan actually played for the Mahoning Valley Scrappers. Nice. They had pictures of him, so I mean, all right. So,
how about this one for a big changeup in May? Seattle, from where they were at the start of the month, they were second place in the AL West with a good chance, sitting right behind the LA Angels, down just 2.5 games. They were 12-10. Houston right behind them was 11-11, and Oakland was 10-12. Now you flash forward here to May 17th, just 16 days later, and the AL West wildly different. Houston got the massive jump out in first place. Angels are still riding good, 24-14. Seattle, on the other hand, they go from 12-10 to now 16-20. They've gone 4-10 in those games since the start of the month. And I don't think if you started at the beginning of this month and went, Seattle's going to come out of this month with a pretty bad losing record, I think a lot of people would have been like, really? If you had said Oakland probably would have fallen apart, people would have been like, well, yeah, that's Oakland. So, that one's not the surprise. But Seattle, the fact that they've had such a bad month of May, I think is one of the bigger surprises for me. And really, in general, how much the AL West has flipped in the last 2 weeks alone.
Yeah. Here's another one. What happened to Carlos Correa, man?
He got injured.
He got injured. Okay, that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
He is close to returning. I was just looking at an article on it.
Okay. All right, good.
Up there for Minnesota and the Twins.
All right. Minnesota's rotation has been pretty darn good, too. I didn't expect this at all. Especially, they have Chris Archer in their rotation. This one was made May 5th, this article, so it's a little bit more accurate than April. As of May 5th, they were 2.63 in ERA. That's third in the MLB. And what is it, FIP? You know what that means? They're 3.38. That's seventh. So
FIP.
What does FIP mean?
I'm gonna feel really stupid here.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, okay. It's just a number. It's literally a number. It's similar to ERA. It takes a pitcher's strikeouts, walks, and home runs allowed and translate them into one number. Kind of like your player efficiency ratings in baseball or QB ratings. Okay. It's a completely made up number that tells us whether or not a player's good.
Okay.
It's basically they took a bunch of numbers, threw them together, and went, "Oh, if you're here, you're doing pretty good." So I think some of those advanced stats can be a little skeptical with baseball sometimes, in my opinion. They don't. Advanced stats have their place, but not in every category, I think.
Uh,
But you look flat out averages right now for those bullpens, and you look down at Minnesota and what they've been doing. They currently sit 11th. They're putting in together an average of 224 as a team. So, and their ERA in total is ranking them fifth at 327. So, this bullpen's been doing a great job for the Twins, and I think it's always the biggest thing when you talk AL Central baseball. The best bullpen wins it, and that's almost always the case, unless you're the Detroit Tigers, who are somehow sixth in pitching right now with ERA and still in last place. They just have scored what looks to be the least amount of runs in baseball this season at just 103. They're pretty bad when it comes to hitting.
When you look at Detroit, like, I'm so in disbelief that they actually had Max Scherzer and David Price and who's the other dude that went to Houston? Verlander. Like, they had those guys in their rotation at one point. At some point, sometime. Like, that's just crazy because you look at them now, you're like, damn, they stink.
They were good back in the 10s.
Oh gosh, I used
2000. Like, they were a good team.
Heck yeah,
when they had some of those guys rolling through, especially Verlander.
Yeah, old man Jim Leland as their manager too, man. The guy smoking in the dugout.
Dodgers and Diamondbacks getting ready to get started here for Major League Baseball. Diamondbacks this season in total might be one of the bigger surprises too, because they also suck at scoring, by the way. Only 128 runs scored so far, which is second to last in the NL West, but that's no surprise with the offensive firepower that the top three teams present. And I think the biggest unfortunate downside for the Diamondbacks is they're in a division that they don't even have a chance in. Even if they have a good season, it's not going to be enough. And I think that's so sad to see for a team like the Diamondbacks, even Colorado, who are in the midst of, they could be competing in any other division in baseball and would be one of the top teams in that division. Instead, they're playing their best when you have teams like the Dodgers, the Padres, and San Francisco, who all absolutely loaded up and are made up of phenomenal superstars of baseball.
Put Colorado in the AL Central. They're like third, fighting for second.
Yeah. What's the win possession? 486. So that would have them in Cleveland's spot at third.
Yeah.
They would be ahead of Cleveland right now because Cleveland's a 485. So, yeah, it's one of those things you just look at and you go, man, that sucks. Especially, when you talk about, the worst teams in baseball, you look at it, obviously it's the worst teams in the division. That's not always right. But, you kind of look at it that way, and it makes it almost sound like Cincinnati and Colorado could be on par, or Washington and Colorado. Or, you look around the league, and Boston is a worse team than Colorado, and they're closer to a wild card spot, potentially.
Boston just surpassed Baltimore, too.
Yeah,
well, they're in last again.
Laughable though.
Yeah, they didn't last very long out of the basement.
And we knew that they weren't going to stay down there forever. They got off to a bad start, and it was going to turn around. You go back to the first of the month, as we were looking at earlier. This is a team 9-14, win percentage down at 391. They should have been last, but Baltimore was playing even worse. They've brought that up to now a 400 win percentage, 14-21. They're finding ways. They're playing a little under 500 in those last 10 games, but they're getting lucky. And I'm going to put this out. They're lucky because outside of the Yankees, Tampa and Toronto have not used this as an opportunity to pull away. They could have very easily pushed Boston into a team that's not going to be into the discussion for another 3 months. But instead, they left the door wide open. In Boston, all they need is a good finish to this month, and they're going to be right back up there next to New York.
Yep.
They're 12 games out of first, which is a lot at the moment with how few games we've played. But we still got a lot of baseball to go. We got what? How many games we got left? We got 129 games left in the season. So a long ways to go. We're just over, a month into the season?
Yeah.
So, we still got a long ways to go. No need to freak out about anybody yet. So, we're a month and 10 days in. Season started officially back on April 7th, where Kansas City was the number one team in the AL Central, getting a win. Cleveland was in last. The Angels were in last. The Cincinnati Reds had a winning record. It was the last time Cincinnati had the winning record. What?
A lot of people say that's the biggest surprise. The Reds stinking. I'm like, they got rid of everybody. I kind of knew this was coming. Like I called it. Like they're gonna be bad. Like I know. Like all these sports writers, like, oh, that's a huge surprise. Like they knew they weren't gonna be good, but like, I mean, I guess it is a little bit, but I knew they were gonna be bad.
Yeah, I think we had an idea they'd be bad. I don't think anybody thought they would be this bad, though.
No.
I think that's the surprise, is they aren't just bad, they're worse than Baltimore.
They're worse. How's Washington? Washington's still better than them, and
I'm just saying Baltimore is the baseline for bad. That is the standard. When you talk bad teams, it's Baltimore. And Cincinnati is like 50 feet of crap below them, and that's where Cincinnati is so far this season.
Nice money ball reference.
They can still turn it around, maybe, if they find the ghost of Babe Ruth or something. But I'm looking back right now, and Cincinnati hasn't had a winning record since they started the season at 1-0. Since then, they've had either 500 or below at this point. So
50 feet of crap, and then there's us.
Yeah, and that's where Cincinnati is sitting right now. They're underneath that 50
Well, how does he say it in the movie? There's like high budget teams, there's middle range teams, and there's what is it?
50 feet of crap, and there's the Oakland Athletics.
I love that scene though.
It's a great one. It's a great one out there.
That's a great movie. Like he's fighting with all the scouts and stuff, and like they all think he's gonna be working at Dick's Sporting Goods and stuff. So, nope, it worked.
Yeah, well, we get to find out today which way the Ohio Cup goes, as we got the first matchup for Cincinnati going up against Cleveland in today's ball game. 6-10, Reds 9-26, Guardians at 16-17, and it should be a fun one. Hope Cleveland comes away with the win. Cincinnati's given us a lot of surprises in the last couple of weeks, so we'll see if they got anything else in store for us. But high school playoffs tonight on YSNLive.com. Tune into them pay-per-view for playoffs. And, folks, we're coming down to the finish of a couple big seasons of sports. So that does it here for Tuesday's edition of the Casual Sports Podcast. I am Alec Caverna. That is Matt Morrison. We will see you tomorrow. And coming up next, as always, Power Hour featuring DJ Oakley. So that'll do it for us here on the show. Hope you all have a great Tuesday. We'll be back at it tomorrow. More podcasting on YSN, your sports network.